Hey, everybody. Happy Thanksgiving. We are all going to celebrate the holiday as we get ready for rivalry week and Saturday, Ohio State and Michigan. But the podcast daily does not stop. We have to keep it rolling. So that's Bill Landis and I'm Austin Ward. And we are graciously joined by one of the all-time institutions in Big Ten media, Angelique Chengelis. I get so excited to say it that I trip over it, from the Detroit News. And just I can't say it enough. One of the best people in this profession, and she is giving us some time before she heads over to get more information about the Michigan Wolverines ahead of Saturday. So, Angelique, thank you for joining us on the podcast.
Well, thanks, Austin. I'm grateful to be an institution. That's good. At least I'm not in one, so that's good.
Yeah, no, definitely. All of us in this profession probably should be, but that's
True.
A different conversation. Okay, so you have covered a couple of these. I think everybody instantly thinks back to 2006 and Game of the Century, and 2016 for me was one of the best ones that I've had the privilege of covering, at least in terms of excitement and difficulty to cover on deadline. But this one has the potential makings for that. So what do you think? What is it about this matchup that is exciting for you as we get ready for another version of 2 versus 3?
Well, I've got to say, the game is always as someone who grew up in Cincinnati, this is a game I grew up with, and I live for this week every year. I keep saying, I think that's why I keep working, just so I can cover this week in this game. But you're right. I remember 06 vividly. I remember getting the word that Bo passed, and I was on the phone. It literally did not get a chance to get out of my pajamas that day because I was on the phone all day, and I normally would leave for Columbus early and talking to his former players and everybody, and it was such an emotional time, obviously, and you're right that 16 game was something else, and last year's game in Ann Arbor was really special. I think part just because of the ambiance. I felt like, in the press box, you saw it. It was like you were in a snow globe watching a football game, and seeing just the Michigan fans. It was just like all this angst released, and they just went nuts. So, I hope that this game on Saturday is something along those lines, because I do respect the rivalry and the game. And when people say it's arguably the best rivalry in college football, I think it is the best, but it needs to look like it on the field and to get all those eyeballs and for people across the country to agree that it is. But I think we know it is.
That's right. That is what matters.
Angelique, what's the vibe up there in Ann Arbor? I think you can imagine what it is here in Columbus. Folks are pretty upset about what happened last year, and you can kind of feel the tension in the air every time you walk into the Woody Hayes Center. I'm curious if it feels that way in Ann Arbor, or if there's any sense of like, listen, we did this last year. We're kind of playing with house money now.
Well, I know, and Bill, I think didn't Ryan Day say that they're scarred? So I think there's a lot of that in Columbus. I think that there is a lot of hand-wringing right now. I can't even tell you how many text messages I've had from people I know very well, and just some people I don't know that well, asking me, well, how's Blake Corum? We're hearing this. What are you hearing? And I think that there is, no one really knows exactly what Blake Corum's status is. I saw him Sunday. He was, for the second year in the road, he purchased turkeys to deliver to this area, 2 communities in Ypsilanti, and I took video of that, and you would think it was the Zapruder film. People are breaking it down, looking at how is he walking, and for the record, it was icy and snowy, so I think everybody was walking delicately. I don't know. I think he's, and Donovan Edwards. Those are very important pieces to this Michigan offense, and Corum has carried this team in so many ways. So I think that there is a lot of that, but I think that before the injury, I think that people were extremely confident with Michigan going into Columbus, a place they haven't won since 2000, as you know.
Yeah. Yeah, we're not going to make you give a prediction about Blake Corum, Angelique. We know there's a long week ahead, and nobody's going to really answer that until Saturday at noon anyway. But hypothetically, if Blake couldn't go, and you referenced Donovan Edwards as well, like, what then does this Michigan offense really look like?
Well, it'll be really interesting. If that's the case, they've been playing the freshman CJ Stokes, and obviously Ohio State has got a lot of production out of its freshman back last week. Stokes is getting better. I can't imagine that they can rely on CJ Stokes. I mean, he can get yards, but he's not Blake Corum and he's not Donovan Edwards. And Donovan has that extra ability as a he can catch out of the backfield and move so gracefully. I just think that this is going to come down to, I think even if Blake Corum's healthy, it's going to come down in my mind to JJ McCarthy. And again, we all know how hard it is for a first-time starter to go into Columbus and play in that environment. I think the guy is really he's unflappable. He meditates on the field before every game, and he's just like that all the time. He's really just got it together. So I don't think he's going to be intimidated by the atmosphere, but they really haven't they haven't connected on the deep ball. The passing game has been it's been okay, and you can't be okay to beat Ohio State and Columbus, let alone anywhere. Right. So I do think it's important for JJ McCarthy and to use his legs. But again, you can't afford to lose him. You can't afford for him to get a big hit. So it's just going to be really interesting to see how Jim Harbaugh and his staff handle all these moving pieces.
Angelique, the few times I've been able to, hear a soundbite or watch a clip of Jim Harbaugh talking about JJ McCarthy, I get the sense that he is like totally enamored with that kid. And maybe there's similarities personality wise or in the way they approach playing the game that kind of fosters that. But what kind of confidence do you sense that Jim Harbaugh has in JJ McCarthy if it is a situation where he kind of needs to put the team on his back?
Okay, Bill, there is no similarity personality-wise between JJ McCarthy and Jim Harbaugh. No, that would be crazy. But no, I know what you're saying. I mean, Jim is the ultimate competitor, when he played quarterback, and JJ's like that. And Jim did say earlier in the season that he sees a lot of himself in JJ in the way he plays. And I didn't cover Jim Harbaugh, but I watched enough of his film. And I see what he's talking about is his ability, his mobility, and I think JJ probably has a better arm than Jim did. But you just haven't seen it. And I think a lot of the criticism of McCarthy lately has been a little unfair because the receivers they don't get much separation. I think Ronnie Bell's the only guy who you can say that has been really, you could count on in that situation. And so I don't think anybody's really seen what JJ McCarthy can do. I mean, I think a lot of people say, well, I mean, it's sort of like what Cade McNamara was doing last year. In a lot of ways it is, but I think everybody knows the potential is there. And Jim does love this kid, and it's time for Jim to unleash this kid and for everybody to see what he can do.
The other things that we pick up on when Jim Harbaugh is in front of a mic, Angelique, and that's always an experience. I'm sure for you to do that every week is just a blast. He's sort of, it felt like to me on Monday, tried to distance himself from third base and finesse and soft and all the things that came up. And I wonder, I mean, obviously that's purposeful, that you don't want to get back on the bulletin board, but you also, I think it's weird. Like, you can't pretend like you didn't earn the bragging rights and like that you didn't say it. Like, stand up there and own it. That's how I feel. But I don't know what the mood was like up there at Schembechler Hall when you're in there hearing that on Monday.
I thought he was pretty giddy on Monday because we all kind of play the game before he shows up. Like, which Jim are we going to talk to today? And a couple of guys like, no, he won't say much. I'm like, no, I think he's gonna talk. And I thought he was chatty for Jim. Okay. And he did actually he did a radio interview 97.1 in Detroit. That John Jansen, one of former Michigan player, is one of the co-hosts, and he did own it today on the radio. Okay. You could say he said it, and he said he kind of did it as a counter punch to the whole hang 100 on Michigan. So, I think what I took from his comments Monday, look, I think that there is the ultimate respect, the Michigan players and the coaches respect Ohio State. They respect this rivalry. I took it as separating this one from the Michigan State rivalry, which is really ugly and really kind of toxic at this stage. And, when he said, there's no hate, there's no hate here. And I thought, yeah, because there is hate in that other rivalry. And I that's how I interpreted it. Maybe,
Got it, yeah.
we all try to read between the lines with Jim and read the tea leaves, and it's very hard. But I was thinking that he was trying to say, I really respect this game, this singular game. And calling them both superheroes, calling the players, there's Heisman players on both and all that stuff. But trust me, I mean, Jim has already thought these things through before. These are not off the cuff. He has his little notes and he's like, I like this, superheroes. And he writes it down and then he comes and says it, and he'll say it repeatedly now for the rest of the week. But yeah, I thought he was in a good mood.
Even Bill and I thought that one was strange because they can't both be superheroes. Somebody's got to be the villain. And I guess I decided that would be okay with Ryan Day and CJ Stroud because they had villain mode, and that okay, well, we don't want to be a superhero, but you can be, and we're going to try to fool your plans.
I don't know how the superhero world works, so I'll trust you on that.
All right. Angelique, I want to ask you about Michigan's defense. New coordinator, obviously, but kind of from the same tree as Mike McDonald was with Jesse Minter coming from the Ravens. The stats are bonkers. Like they're crazy good. How much of that do you think is an accurate reflection of how good the defense actually is, and how much of it is a reflection of who they've played to this point?
I have been thinking about that, Bill, because it's sort of like the whole chicken and egg thing. Is it because the talent's been really mediocre for the most part? There have been some games where they're pretty good offensive talent they've gone against. I really think this defense is pretty good. And I obviously we will know more on Saturday, because this will be their biggest and really their only big test of the season. But I think that they're pretty good. And I think it was a really seamless transition from McDonald to Minter, speak the same language, speak the same defense. The players really it was just very smooth. And I like the Mozzie Smith, the thing he said before the season, and it was via Mike Morris quoting him saying that, I think they got tired of hearing that the defense just went through Ojabo and Hutchinson and even Dax Hill. And they wanted this to be all 11. And I think you're seeing that. I mean, I think the way you can see the sacks, I mean, it's like 35 sacks, I think 34, 35 among 14 players. I mean, 9 guys have 2 or more, and they've really spread the wealth a little bit. Mike Morris is the guy who has stood out in that sense. And then there's Mozzie in the middle. I mean, and he's not getting much fanfare, and which I think is unfortunate, because I think he's been so impressive in my mind, just watching him take on double teams and do the things he does. I'm not saying that there aren't holes on this defense, because I'm still not sure what I think of the linebackers. They didn't have Nakai Hill-Green all year. I thought he was somebody who was going to lift them. Colson's really good. Michael Barrett has finally found a home. He was a Viper in Don Brown's defense. And the defensive backs are coming along. I don't know if they're good enough to match up with these guys, with these receivers that they're about to face, Marvin Harrison. I mean, but I think you're going to see Will Johnson, the freshman. I think they're trusting him more and more. And I think he's definitely improving and will be somebody they're going to build the defense around in the future here. But I think it's a good defense, and people keep asking me if I think it's better. I think it is better than last year's defense in the sense that it's all 11, and it's not just you can't replace Ojabo and Hutchinson, but I like what they've done this year.
Okay, Angelique, you said that before getting down to games that are in the horseshoe, you like to leave early on Friday. Is that so that you can get straight to Skyline and Graders and have enough time for that, or what's the plan for this particular Black Friday?
Not only do I go to Skyline and Graders, but I go to Skyline and Graders in Cincinnati.
Okay.
And because that's where it's the best. And then I make my way back to Columbus. So yes, okay. I mean, I every time I post a photo, and I do it on purpose, I post a photo of Skyline on Twitter because it enrages so many people up here. And I'm just like, and they hate it. And I'm like, I don't care. I love it. And Graders, I think everybody knows Graders is the best. No offense, Jenny's. I know you're there. I'm sorry, but yeah, that's my tradition and I'm sticking to it.
What is the best Graders flavor?
I've said this multiple times on Twitter, and again, I'm like, please don't hate me.
Okay.
But I love Buckeye Blitz. I used to be mint chip, but Buckeye Blitz is really, really good. And I've actually found it a couple times in stores up here in Metro Detroit. I'm like, what are you thinking? You got Brutus Buckeye on a pint of ice cream, and you got two fan bases that don't really like you. So, but it's good. Yeah. It's really good. And Boldly Bearcat, my alma mater, that ice cream for UC is really, really good.
Yeah. Buckeye Blitz is phenomenal. I'm surprised that they don't just call it something else once you cross the border, but that's if anyone could make that happen, I'm sure that it's you.
Or block out the bees or something, make it do something to make it a Michigan thing.
That's right. There's got to be something. But Angelique will be heading down there for her tradition, and we are going to see her back in the press box in the Horseshoe on Saturday. Can't wait. It's number 2 versus number 3. I assume this is Tuesday afternoon. Spoiler alert. But I can't see why the rankings would change, and that's where these two teams, I think, fairly should be at this point, playing for the East Division Championship, playing to get to Indy and to get to the college football playoff. Another classic, hopefully. We appreciate Angelique giving us some of her time as she heads over to cover the rest of the goings-on in Ann Arbor this week. And for her, Bill, I am Austin. Happy Thanksgiving, everybody. I hope you enjoyed. Thanks for hanging out with us on the Podcast Daily.